They might say something like in a short term, the citizens of the developing country are like suffering.
My speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Panel, opposition tries to stuff as much food as possible in a pressure cooker. It cooks faster and more, but it will explode. That's what side opposition will represent. Our setup here is that I'll have six layers of setup before moving on to my arguments. Now my first layer of setup is how does these developing nations look like? For them, every cent counts. The second layer of setup I will be saying is what are the incentives, or how does the incentives of these developing nations look like? If you have a hit tourist attraction, for example, like Sunway Lagoon, it is obviously your best interest to sustain it. If you just want to make money, fine. But if you're too stingy to spend it, it will be quite illogical, which I'll explain further on. Number 3, how tourism will look like if it's green. If it's green, it will last longer. There will be a better image on the country too. If it's environmentally friendly, it will be more acceptable because society now thinks that the greener is the better. Number 4, the purpose of tourism to developing nations. Number one I'm talking about here is the income. The more the tourists, the more money we make, which helps the developing countries. With income like this, these developing countries could really boost the economy. And number 2, the image. Tourism isn't only a source of income for countries, but it's also a good recognition for the country and the image. And an example of this is Bali. Within the city, is very dirty, landfills between the houses, and the economy will crumble because there will be no tourists. Because which tourist will want to come to a city that's dirty and filled with garbage? Number 5, how sustainable tourism actually looks like. Let's say we go on an island instead of using a boat that uses petrol. We actually put effort into sustainable tourism, but actually maybe using kayaking. Because what's the use of using a petrol boat than actually using a petrol boat to go to a beautiful island that has no smoke, there's no pollution, but we use a boat that uses petrol. Now, how do these tourists look like? We say that these tourists are high money spenders from first world countries who actually care about the environment. Now moving on to our stakeholders. The first stakeholder I'll say is the government. The government is actually important because we actually help the government because we will make the city of the government greener, and we will provide better income for them. Our other stakeholder is also the tourists, because now it has more eco-friendly options. And next will be the citizens, because who wouldn't be happy when they realize that their country is getting greener, their country is getting safer, their country isn't. You can go into their country and you won't see plastic in every 10-meter direction you see. And the last stakeholder I'll say is the cultural heritage, the people of the cultural heritage. This will boost the popularity, and people will help if any problems appear, because now people will know that when the culture gets recognized when the culture gets recognized worldwide. Before I move on, any QIs? 3, 2, 1. Okay. Now moving on. Now there's a few things we need to concede in this debate. We concede that it costs money, but we are willing to take this to better protect the environment, because on the comparative, we don't do this. The environment is going to suffer and be worse eventually. If the environment is destroyed, then there is no money to be made from tourism, and the cultural and natural attractions and beauties are gone. Number 2, long-term development. On the comparative, developing nations such as Malaysia is never going to take a risk to develop in the long term and stay as a developing nation. From this, developing countries become highly polluted and dirty as they become unsustainable. Number 3, preserve our cultural and natural heritage. Tourism, especially those from first world countries with high spending power, are going for countries with high culture and natural heritage. On the comparative, these tourists aren't going to come to our country the moment sustainable tourism disappears. Now, Now, moving on to my argument. The first argument, my main argument is how the place is likely to be better in the long run. Let's talk about income first. You may get more money in the short term, but investing in the tourism industry is way more sustainable. Why is this likely to happen? It's because on our side, more tourists will be attracted to the country's tourist attraction because it's more greener. Like I said earlier, like I said in my setup earlier, these tourists are high money spenders that are from first world countries who actually care about the environment. On our side, more tourists will be attracted. Now I'll talk about image. The image of the country is very important for developing nations. Our side, it provides an image where the country is clean, eco-friendly, and has good tourist facilities. This is true because the image of the country will definitely affect the popularity of the country. You aren't just going to simply go to a country and you can't just look at a country and see how dirty it is and say, oh, I want to go there because it's dirty. No, you see a country that's green, you see a country that's natural beauty. Of course, you want to go there. Now, moving on to the culture. We need to sustain it because the culture will be diluted. On their side, their goal is to rapidly develop, but that completely loses the sincerity of the culture because of overdevelopment. And why is this likely to happen? In status quo, many traditional cultures have been lost because of the overdevelopment. Now, I'll tell you the impact on my argument. Number one, we will be more greener and the country will have more tourists because now society, like I said earlier, society thinks of green earth is very, very, very important. While on side opposition, their countries won't only have a decrease of tourists, but the economy will not survive in the next 50 years because they aren't green and the country will be polluted. So in conclusion, I have proven to you that the greener the earth, the better. Even if it's expensive at the start, we get so much later on. And with that, I'd like to end my speech. Thank you.
Chicken inside.
Just one.
Then, to start the case from the opposition team, here is the first speaker of the opposition. Mr. Speaker, agree.
Okay, so before I begin my speech, I would like to rebut some of the points that was made by side government. So, let me ask you, okay, here's the thing, when you focus too much on tourism, a lot of bad things can happen. Like, let's say another pandemic, for example, like the COVID-19 last time, like during 2020, what happens if like another similar pandemic like hits us? What will happen to these countries that over relies on the tourism economy? What will happen to them? They will crumble because they cannot get any more tourists because flights are like all being cancelled because they do not want to spread the virus to any other countries. Alright. So another rebuttal from me is that in order to attract tourists, you got to build a lot of infrastructures. But you, as a developing nation, you don't have much of a you don't have much resources to deal with in the first place, because again, you are a developing country. So like, to build in this infrastructures, a lot of resources has to be poured out in order to just attract some tourists, and it's not even guaranteed that you will even attract some tourists. Sure, maybe you can attract very like minimal amount of tourists, but then again, that minimal amount is not it's not enough to deal with the amount of money that you have spent on these infrastructures. Plus, a lot of and I think that is all from I got so looks can be deceiving. This can be used to this statement can be used to describe this very motion, because okay, sustainable tourism refers to project and activities done to promote tourism. For example, cultural village that we have here in Sarawak, Kuching Sarawak. Sorry. So, developing nations are nations that is still in the process of diversifying and expanding economies into various sectors. For example, the agricultural sector, the oil sector, and so on, because we in Malaysia, we do have a lot of oil that we can export to other countries and also use for ourselves. And some governments of these nations actually put out a large amount of their resources into sustainable tourism for the sake of obtaining foreign currency easily. This, however, is a bad way to go, because focusing too much on unsustainable tourism as a developing nation that is as a developing nation, these tourist attractions end up being unable to diversify their economy further with large spending on tourism, and nothing else is done. For example, the UAE. The UAE has focused a large amount of cash on tourist attractions. These lavish projects create nothing but a false image. What I mean by a false image is that they look modernized, they look very developed, but here's the thing, they are not. They are hiding their underlying problems. I will explain on this later on. So, these lavish projects looked good because they, hold on. As a result, the UAE has become very over-reliant and cannot diversify their economy any further, because they have focused way too much on the tourism industry. So our stance in this motion is that we on the side opposition aren't against the concept of sustainable tourism itself. However, we oppose to the implementation of it on developing nations because they don't have the capacity to maintain them in the first place. We instead support the preservation of we instead support the preservation of culture without these implementations. So we on the government side has to prove these following things. Developing nature. The government side has to prove that these developing nations actually have the capacity to maintain these tourist projects in the first place, and the government side has to also prove that why it's so detrimental to implement this motion in the first place. So, however, we on the opposition side will prove why it is not feasible, causes detrimental effect to the infrastructure and workforce of a country, and I shall be covering these points of economic diversity and false idealization, and also and my second speaker shall talk about the human rights abuses and also the labor concerns. So moving on to my main points. These countries these tourist countries, they are focusing way too much on tourism economy. Alright, However, we on the opposition side instead suggest that you diversify this economy into like multiple sectors. Don't just focus on one sector, because once you focus too much on one sector, you cannot turn back. And like, as I said, the UAE is a good example. Right? They focus way too much on their like tourism. Now they cannot go back. Although yes, they do have some oil projects, but here's the thing: the oil projects, they do have some good oil economy, but the thing is their oil economy is not sustainable in the long term, because oil is running out. As you know, it is not like oil cannot be created in matter of years or days and so on. It takes millions of years for fossil fuel to be created underground, and instead. And because of instead of like focusing in this tourism economy, we instead suggest that you focus more on the agricultural economy and other economy, because this is a good thing for the long-term economical stability of a country. And my second point is that it creates a false image of how a country actually is. For example, take Dubai. Alright, they have this like one place where like there's like this one rich city, and then the surrounding city is like a slum. Because like the thing with Dubai is that Dubai has a lot of tourists, but they hide their true problems underneath those like lavish projects that they created. For example, the Burj Khalifa. The Burj Khalifa, although yes, it looks fancy, but there's not even a sewage system. God, it literally flooded because of it. And another one is that I think that is all for me. Thank you.
To continue our debate today, I would like to call the second speaker of the affirmative team, Mr. Keegan.
Okay, am I audible at this module?
Yep.
Okay, I will start in 3, 2, 1. Panel, this debate is not about whether or not we care about tourism. It is a debate about the approach we take towards tourism, sustainable methods or not. On both sides, we spend money on tourism. That is not even the point of this debate. Their claims about obtaining foreign currency and a false image is totally irrelevant, because the point of this debate is to debate about whether we want to use sustainable methods towards tourism or not. I'm so proud to propose. Now, in my speech today will first consist on one rebuttal on feasibility, and then after that 2 arguments on international and societal acceptance, and number 2 on sustainable tourism industry. Now, this was an extreme one-liner coming out from side opposition, but I would like to rebut their point of feasibility of sustainable practices, because they tell you that developing tourist hotspots already cost lots of money. The only thing we are doing differently is that we are spending the money on sustainable methods. It's not that we are spending way more money. But I tell you, right, even if it costs way more money, it is a long-term investment, because if so many people flock to the area and there is no proper waste management, for example, landfills will eventually fill. If all the tourists want to go to Bali and Bali does not take an effort to manage the waste, eventually there will be landfills, eventually the area will be polluted. So we tell you it is a long-term investment. It is incredibly unpleasant for tourists when their hotel, their 5-star resort is here, and then in an island totally opposite, they see a huge landfill there. It is unpleasant, and it is what turns tourists away. We want to prevent that. We want proper management for sustainable investment. Now, you need to know one thing. If you are grappling with environmental problems in the long term, it is still going to cost lots of money. So your case on how your side is cheaper, our side is super expensive, will totally fall, because I tell you in the long term, if there are no management, if there are no effort towards management, in the long term when you are suffering, you will have to manage it either way. We tell opposition simply does not care about the environment. Now, I'll move on to one argument of societal and international acceptance. Why does it exist? We tell you that the world is moving towards sustainability. And number 2, international community and people expect sustainable standards. This is where opposition fails. They want to keep to their current la-la land of like funding these development projects for tourism hotspots through their usual way. They want to use petrol, gasoline, fine, it's cheaper on your side. But I tell you in the long term, you're likely to suffer environmental impacts. People are unlikely to want to come because we tell you that the tourists are likely to be from first world nations. People from Europe, for example, have the highest spending power when they come to Malaysia. These are the people we actually want to satisfy because they spend the most money in our country. These people care about the environment, and when you do not care about the environment, they're likely to pick another tourist hotspot where they can actually be satisfied with their tourism choices. Number 3, how the country is perceived to be a bastion of environmental preservation. And number 4, our country does not face backlash for bad sustainable practices, which I'll prove to you why it's so important. So why is this acceptance from society and international parties so important to our country? We tell you that number 1, people want to visit that area more because of the societal expectation of sustainability. Tourists want to feel positive about going to the area. They do not want to go there and know at the back of their mind, I'm funding this huge environmental problem, I'm funding this huge landfill, which I know this host country is not going to solve. I want to go to somewhere which can positively use the money that I spend in the area and can positively take me in as a tourist. It doesn't matter if one island is a 5-star resort, but the other is a huge landfill, because people will know at the back of their mind. And we want people to go there positively and come out positively. Tourists do not want to support negative sustainability. Okay? And now, next, on why it's so important, because there'll be more international investments. Things like hotel chains, things like theme parks, they are more likely to go to your area when you focus on environmental policy. Because these companies want a good reputation. They want to go to countries, want to go to areas where they support environmental policies. We tell you that this is so important because without these international hotel chains and these international attractions, these places are unlikely to develop to a high level. Sure, you can have your nice beach and whatever, but I tell you, if you really want to develop to a high level, you still need hotels like Marriott and things like that. Number 3, on how there is no political backlash from the international community. We tell you it's from within and also from outside, because people are extremely angry about worsening conditions in the area. Like those residents will be extremely unhappy about tourists coming to their area and polluting their area. This is where the people on the ground start to backlash against the government, and this is where the government is forced to change. This is also tied together of foreign countries calling out these governments because they do not care about environmental policies. I tell you, when this happens, the government is forced to change their approaches towards tourism, and we tell you that tourism is unlikely to be sustainable and will be affected with no backup plan. For example, Bali has been a vacation hotspot for decades. Everyone wants to go to Bali for their holiday. But now, the entire place is suffering from pollution. It is factually true because of the International Pollution Index. There are huge landfills near tourist attractions, and it's extremely unpleasant tourist experiences. And tourists start to complain, and in the end, people will not want to go because of the terrible condition that is happening on the ground. Before I move on to my next argument, any POIs?
No, sir. Oh wait, yes, one.
Yep.
Why is it that that these pollutions happen specifically near tourist hotspots?
You see, right? Pollution happens exclusively when tourists come in because there is a huge influx of people coming in. Without tourists coming in, it's just the local residents which have their local ways of life. But when tourists come in, is where they spend more on things, they do more things because they have higher spending capital. They are able to do more things, which means they create more waste. There's just more people in the area, which inherently creates higher levels of pollution, which we care about. Opposition does nothing about it. In the end, their tourist hotspot will become a dead spot. Now, my second argument on how the tourism industry is likely to be sustainable is because the tourism industry in the country is likely to last way longer. It's because the country adopts practices to actually protect these tourist hotspots. Because for example, if you go snorkeling in Thailand, fine, you go in 2010, for example, there are lots and lots of fish. But if you pollute the sea repeatedly without doing anything about it, eventually the fish will leave the area, or the fish will just die in the area. The place is no longer a tourist hotspot. Nobody wants to go there because even the fish aren't there anymore. We tell that the tourism hotspots are likely to die out if you take no measures to protect these areas. I tell you that in this debate, insofar as opposition are unable to prove how these tourist hotspots are actually protected, we take this debate. So proud to propose.
6 minutes, 56 seconds.
Okay.
Then, to continue our debate today, I would like to call the second speaker of the opposition team, Mr. Sham.
Still stand on tourism, it's just one approach you take. It literally doesn't matter.
Give me a moment to set up my notes, please. Thank you very much. Alright, I shall be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. So throughout the speeches of the first two speakers, right, some of the main arguments that came up time and time again were regarding the dilution of culture and local heritage through on our side, the political backlash, right, from landfills, as well as environmental pollution, as well as measures to protect these tourist hotspots. First of all, I'd like to rebut the point relating to the general characterization of what sustainable environmental tourism is. Sustainable tourism is not just maintaining the tourist hotspots that's already in the status quo, but also introducing new ones. More often than not, these developing countries, right, when they already make tourism a large part of their economy, right, they obviously want to spend more and more into opening up these new tourist hotspots, be it sustainable or not. This is exactly what in the case for Dubai, this is exactly the case for Hawaii. All of these countries, right, have built an image on becoming tourist hotspots, and this is exactly why this is bad. First of all, creating a false idealization of what their culture actually is. Side government wants to come up here and say that side opposition dilutes culture through rapid industrialization. However, this is an extreme one-liner, because not only did they fail to characterize any single not only did they fail to give any examples, right, of any country that lost their culture simply because they rapidly industrialized, right, but it's actually blatantly false. For example, Japan managed to rapidly industrialize and still maintain their local economy. Still managed to maintain their local heritage and culture. I'd also like to rebut the topic of pollution. The thing is, right, side government is solving a problem that they themselves are creating. The more that they invest in these tourist hotspots, right, into opening these new tourist hotspots, as well as making their country a lot more of an easier place for tourists to go to, a lot more and focusing too much on tourism in general, right? More and more pollution is gonna happen. Like admitted by the second speaker, right? More often than not, these pollutions happen because of the large amount of tourists coming in to the first place. So by implementing even more tourist hotspots, right, and not having the capability of cleaning these landfills up, right, they're just going to overload the country more and more up until the point where it's not doable anymore. So the thing is, right, they can't come up here and say that they are going to put money into cleaning up the landfills and whatnot, because tourists are going to stack up over time, and as you introduce more tourists are going to come in. So it's a problem that multiplies over time. And also when it comes to environmental, when it comes to landfills and whatnot, cleaning is already, general sanitary cleaning is already present in the status quo, whether they have sustainable tourism or not. It's just every single nation, whether or not they implement this policy into their actual economic policy, has a certain amount of money set forward for cleaning up the environment. It's not really, so that also not only rebuts the case about the landfills, but also the case about political backlash. Yeah, sure. Go on.
Do you expect them to maintain the environment without any funds?
Okay. Regarding maintaining the environments without any funds, you see, on our side we actually have even more funds, because if we were to diversify the economy even more and more local people will get jobs. I will relate this back with my point later on. But the thing is, right, if you were to focus too much on solely, so as I said before, it's a multiplying problem. Also on our side, yes, we do concede the fact that it's a growing problem. At the end of the day, we're still going to have to spend money on trying to fix and clean the environment. However, on our side of the house, we're going to do it slowly but surely. So we can actually adapt no matter how many tourists come in. However, on their side of the case, they have a lack of security. What do I mean by this? First of all, the pandemic has shown the COVID-19 pandemic, right, has proven that countries that focus a lot more, especially developing countries that focus primarily on tourism, right, were significantly impacted by pandemics and other natural catastrophes. So overall, right, it would provide a lot. So overall, right, how does this relate to the motion? If we were to diversify the economy, right, not only would we be able to maintain these already, not only would we be able to maintain the already present tourist hotspots, but we wouldn't have to waste even more money, right, on getting rid of the current infrastructure we have in place and bringing into the quote-unquote sustainable infrastructure that comes with sustainable tourism. In fact, if you want to argue about environmental things, right, there's a lot more policies that the government can implement, right, that will bring a lot better effect to the environment than just tourism. Let's say the decrease of greenhouse gases from factories, the ban on plastics. That is an actual solution to the problem instead of just focusing on tourism, and can only come from an actual proper look back on economic policy instead of just focusing on tourism itself. So now onto my points. Labor. Nations that are developing, right, more often than not can't really afford to pay local workers higher salaries, and as a result, right, side opposition, even if they want to say that they somehow managed to get the labor to actually sustain these tourist hotspots, right, more often than not in the status quo, if you see the status quo, these nations end up bringing in migrant workers, and as a result, right, more often than not, these foreign laborers aren't actually paid enough, and they are subjected to bad conditions of living. Wouldn't this beat the whole concept of wouldn't this beat the whole argument of having a good image as well as getting political backlash? Because if you were to focus so much on developing without actually developing a proper economic, if you also to focus so much on sustainable terrorism, right, without developing a proper economic infrastructure, right, this will actually happen. It's already present in the UAE. It's already present in the UAE, for example. We mentioned that because it's a prime example, right, of a developing nation focusing too much on tourism. And also regarding to the attack on our characterization, right, the keyword here is also developing nations. So as a value motion, right, we also have to argue why it's actually feasible to implement this in the first place. And we as side opposition have been trying to say time and time again that it's not at all feasible. We've already rebutted the arguments on cultural dilution. We already rebutted the points on pollution, as well as we already rebutted on the need to have these economic diversity to begin with. And that's all from me. Thank you very much. Right, all
7 minutes and 17 seconds.
Ladies and gentlemen, and the honorable adjudicators, this is the third speaker of the affirmative team, Mr. Nathan.
The speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Panel, we are the only side that actually benefits the developing country in this debate. In my speech, I'll tell you precisely why. Number one, I'll give you 5 rebuttals against their argument on how they say that we won't diversify the economy. And number 2, we will talk about how we will rebut the argument about a false image. Number 3, we will rebut about how they say that more tourism makes more pollution. But now on my first rebuttal, they claim that we should diversify the economy because we should diversify the economy towards agriculture or something else like that. Well, number one, it's irrelevant because we're talking about the tourism industry here. We're not talking about whether other types of economy is better. We're talking about how we're going to tackle tourism industry. And even if it really is about it, how can other sources of economy be better than
the tourism industry, when the tourism industry brings a good image to you, when the tourism industry gives your country an image that you're eco-friendly. And number two, they talk about us having a false image. They bring up examples such as the UAE or Dubai being very advanced in tourism, but they have slum tourism or something like that. This is completely irrelevant. Number one, they bring it up all the time and time again. Even if it is true, even if other areas are modernized, the developing countries can still rely on those modernized areas to actually advance the economy. It's still better, and they never prove why it's better on their side. Okay, and number three, they said that more tourism makes more pollution. Well, that's precisely why we take measures to prevent it. On your side, tourism makes pollution, but you do not give them funds to actually reduce the pollution. You do not give them funds to help the environment at all. Number five, they said that general sanitary things or general keeping of the environment or like sweeping the floor or something is already implemented in status quo. Well, we tell you that on our side we still win on scale because we provide them funds to clean the environment, we provide them more funds, even though it's definitely not more expensive. If we assume that it is more expensive, which is our worst case, we still win in this debate. Now, yes.
You say right, sustainable tourism, they're gonna pay people their money to clean the city. But doesn't that fall under other theory, but not actually sustainable tourism? How exactly you react to this? Because this is different sector. Or cleaning is hygiene sector, it's not tourism sector.
Okay, so here it's talking about sustainable tourism. We are supporting sustainable tourism, where even if you claim that it's more expensive, we still take this debate because we provide them more funds to actually make it sustainable. We make it last longer because it's eco-friendly. We make it last longer because we're protecting and preserving their culture and itself. Okay, now moving on to my only clash, which is who provides better for the developing country, which is the actor in today's debate. Now, this clash is very simple. Their side thinks that in short term it will be better for the developing country, but on our side we push that in long term we will come out the top side. They might claim that it's expensive and that the developing countries don't have enough funds to actually spend money on this sustainable tourism, but this money, we have already proven that we easily get this back on our side. Their side claims the benefit of having more money to develop in the short term, whereas our side claims the many benefits of more money in the future, a good image in the future, preserved culture, and a thriving tourist industry that attracts tourists because it's eco-friendly, and we have proven that the money that is spent is worth in the long term. Now let's move on to the best case and the worst case. On their best case, they have a good tourist industry in the short term. However, sure, it's popular and you don't spend that much money in the short term, but your culture is diluted because of overpopulation, overdevelopment due to and you're also known for a lack of funds towards the environment. Also, on our worst case, we still come out on top because yes, it might cost a lot of money in the short term, but we have good image and an eco-friendly image which provides more money in the future of the environment. Therefore, let's do an analysis here. Which side provides better for the actor, which is the developing motion, which is the developing nation? Obviously, it's our side because in the future, we get a good image. Good image equals more people coming to our country to spend money, more people coming to our country because of the tourism industry that is clean, the tourism industry that is known for being eco-friendly, a tourism industry that appeals to the people in first world countries that are big money spenders, that will boost the economy on our side. We provide all these for the developing country, whereas their side, they only claim that they diversify the economy for the developing country. Our side clearly takes this clash, there is no debate about it. Now, moving on to my winning metrics, the only important stakeholder here that I've set into this debate is the developing countries. And so far, they have never talked about any actor analysis. So far, they have brought up completely irrelevant points, not talking about the tourism industry, instead diverting the debate into other sectors like diversifying the economy into other sectors, even though right here we're clearly talking about the tourism industry. Their side has completely lost this debate because the only points that they have said is that what if we have a pandemic, you're going to over-rely on it and your tourism industry is going to fall. They have never proven why on their side is better because in a pandemic, obviously the tourism industry on both sides will drop at some point. But the fact that we provide, okay, but the fact that we don't over rely is the moment that they lose, right? Because they keep saying that we over rely on the tourism industry, even though they don't get the motion saying that both sides rely on the tourism industry. The only thing is that we prioritize environmental concerns. The whole case also talks about how we have a false image. They bring up examples like the UAE and Dubai. Even though they're developed countries, they debate outside this motion, and therefore, since they have no actual analysis, since they have completely debated outside this motion, since they have never proven anything about how the developing countries are benefited on their side, we are completely with this debate. I am so proud to oppose and oppose.
6 minutes and 40 seconds.
Thank you. I have no idea what it is.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, and the honorable adjudicators, this is the third speaker of the opposition team, Mr. Farish.
Okay, I will begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. First, I want to say that the government side is really judging the book by its cover. It's trying to make people judge the book by its cover because they're trying to create an image that is only one-sided. They're trying to make the country look good, while the reality is not. The content is not there. They talk about Bali over and over again, but they don't look at the whole Indonesia. They just talk about Bali. Look at Bali. Bali is a beautiful resort, but look at the whole of Indonesia. Look at Jakarta. There's a lot of trash over there. You are trying to say is where you focus. I would like to invite the first speaker point where they're trying to say that they're trying to create a good image of country because this country support the sustainable implementation of sustainable tourism. But actually they're trying to do not even sustainable. This is not sustainable because they only say about the example is Bali. Look at the whole country of Indonesia. Sustainable tourism is literally non-existent in Indonesia because other part of it is not even sustainable. And the third speaker of the government also said that about using more money. This motion that about using more money it may be more expensive in that case. But as the motion that implies, this house as developing nation have really low capacity of money to play with. They can't really pull out money out of the tree. They can't just create money out of the thin air. They need money. Their money is already situation into other sector that they're already focusing on developing, as they said in developing country. And they say that our motion that we are trying to debating about the irrelevant stuff, like the motion says support the implementation of sustainable tourism. We don't support it, but we think it could be better if we just support their devices, make this thing more separate, more widespread toward other sector. So it's still irrelevant because we don't support, because we still go opposite of this. And other than that, the speaker of government failed to rebut our point, which is given by my first speaker, which is over-reliance on tourism. They never said anything about over-reliance on tourism, and they said the country will not crumble if they over-rely on on tourism. Yes.
In the pandemic, how does your side fare better in a pandemic?
No, easily. Because our side fare better because we diversify our economy to develop other sector. Thus, these other sectors, such as healthcare sector, are better. They are better at producing money. They still income because when there's pandemic, tourism is completely gone. Tourism is completely gone. But these other sectors still alive. They still produce income. Still our sector, our case is still better than yours because we still have income. But
you are relying on tourism, and if tourism dies out, your country also die out. This developing country is going to die out also. And also, you never debated the point of my second speaker, which is the lack of security in this area of tourism. And also, hold on, get my point. We believe that the test in this debate is which side come on top. Basically, the better side that provide the better. We believe it is the opposition that come on top on this situation because we solve multiple problems. Meanwhile, the government is trying to focus on one thing especially. They are going for specialization, but we go for jack of all trades. We try to solve everything equally. We are then trying to specialize on sustainable tourism, as said. But sustainable tourism is only one thing. A lot of countries have fallen over this year because of their over-reliance on one set income of economy. Yes?
How would you replicate the image, the good image that comes from tourism?
The good image comes from tourism. If other people see a country is they're providing eco-friendly country, they show image, good image, greener image. So people will think they're good country. But when people actually go there, the way the image they put is only as one city. They focus on that one city, like they said Bali. But what happens if this tourism go on into Indonesia, the other part of Indonesia, which is not well developed, so they will see the true image of the country. So they will actually not go to the country because the country is trying to create a propaganda to force tourists into the country and go to the certain place where they develop everything. And also, it's quite weird that the government side only mentioned about the first world country as a tourist. Come on, tourists come in a really large number. You can't only expect first world country to visit third world country. And why do you view only the third person that visit the country is person that actually support the greener technology? It's kind of weird take from government. They don't want to take the bad people. They only take the good side of the things, and they don't focus the majority. They only take the minority. Third world, they don't even mention third world country tourists. They only mention first world country tourists. They support their side, they support their case, but they don't mention the majority. They only focus on minority. As I mentioned, the government side is only focused on specialization, and we focus more on generalization, which is jack of all trades, which is better in my point. To look at the case, the whole case of government is they're trying to implement this sustainable tourism to preserve natural and cultural heritage, but they provide one-liners. Like as mentioned here, by the first speaker, they mentioned overdevelopment cause loss of cultural heritage, but they never mentioned really how this cause cultural heritage. And their case is they're trying to focus on one thing by not solving others, by taking money from others. Like the third speaker that even though it will take more money, if I said this is a developing country, if you want to take money, it's gonna be from other sector that you're trying to develop. So actually this is going to kill the country because the sector that is actually part of the main role is actually getting sabotaged by the government, just trying to improve their tourism. And also, they say that people don't support the country with view on they don't go green. They go green basically. They don't support environmental problem. But actually, to me, that is true. But the problem is if you focus too much on the tourists, you're focusing on other people. How about the people in your country itself? The government is actually focused on other people, but not the citizen of the country, developing country itself. Thus, actually provide a worst case for the living standard for the people in the country. Like my second speaker mentioned about human abuse, human rights abuse, which is really bad thing to happen because now the local will riot against the government. I don't know how the government side would face against this. And other than that, I think that's all.
7 minutes and 25 seconds. To end up our debate today, here is the reply speech from the opposition team. Mr. Shams.
Let me set my timer real quick. Right. I shall be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. My fellow judges, why exactly should we win today's debate? First of all, contradictions within the side government's case. Side government was so initially hell-bent on being against development, and yet suddenly, throughout the rest of their case, suddenly they support development, indirectly actually supporting and conceding to the benefits that development actually has. Second of all, second contradiction, they themselves have admitted to the fact that they over-rely on tourism, as said by the first speaker, when I quote, economy will crumble because there's no tourists. That in itself is a contradiction to their entire case, which says they won't really cause that much of an effect if tourism isn't really, if more focus is put onto tourism, yeah. Side Opp has brought up the one-liner, which is the dilution of culture, not giving any deep analysis, nor actually proving why this actually happens, or giving any examples as to countries that actually have faced this phenomenon. Whilst on our side, we have actually given examples of countries that have developed to such an extent and yet still maintain their culture and heritage. Side opposition also didn't rebut our concerns on human rights abuses and the use of foreign migrants to meet the manpower needs for upkeep at a low cost. I mentioned this in my second speaker points, and yet I have heard nothing from side opposition with. Another thing that I'd like to point out would be our characterization of the motion. Side opposition has tried time and time again to rebut our points, but here is to rebut our characterization of the motion, and this is why we characterize the motion properly. We on side opposition take into account not only the subject of the motion, but also the actor of the motion. While side government has been focusing too much on the subject of the motion, which is tourism, instead of linking it back to how it's beneficial for the developing nations. Whereas the motion should be based on the benefits and the downsides to these developing nations and whether or not it's actually feasible. Whilst here on side opposition, side government completely swept that under the rug. Now then, for our clash. The main thing that is clashing between the two sides in this debate is which one provides provides better economic development for the developing nations, which one overall provides even more, and which one overall provides less harms towards the developing nations. This is why we win this clash, because on our best case scenario, we would still be able to obtain all the benefits on side government's case, because as we develop more, as said my third speaker has said, since cleanliness is in a completely different, since cleanliness is in its own category and sector, as we develop more money will be able to go into it, and thus we will actually have that capacity. Was inside opposition's best case scenario, right? They don't really have that capacity to begin with, and even if they do have that capacity, the growth of that capacity, right, would not be able to catch up to the growth of the tourists that are coming into their country. So their case is a losing one to begin with, because it's a cycle of endless monetary drain. At the very least, on our side, right, even if the tourism sector isn't really up to par with government side, the developing nation overall would still be better economically as compared to side government, and can slowly develop its tourism till it is not a developing nation. And that is why we on side of opposition should win this debate here.
4 minutes, 11 seconds.
Yes,
The last is the reply speech from the government team, Mr. Keegan.
get some more from the content.
I will start in 3, 2, 1. Hello, yes, we support the rapid development of our tourism industry. The only thing we want for it is for it to be sustainable. I am left at a loss for what opposition is actually trying to prove in today's debate, because we acknowledge that the tourism industry is actually very important and we want it to be sustainable as it is important to the country. Now, my speech today, I'll be doing a few things. Firstly, on a few technical call-outs, then after that, on the two areas of discussion on feasibility as well as the reality of tourism in the nation. Now, firstly on technical call-outs. I'll totally take this debate out of context because they tell you things like, oh, the tourism industry is unreliable. Oh, you want to redirect funds towards other industries. I'm left at a loss of how this actually ties back to tourism, because you want to develop other industries, but we're talking about tourism in today's debate. Note how what this debate was actually about is a value judgment of sustainable tourism approaches versus unsustainable tourism approaches. Opp have done nothing to prove this and have done nothing to solve the problem. Even if we take opposition at their best, they still have not told you why tourism in status quo is necessarily positive, which is what they needed to prove in today's debate. They needed to tell us how unsustainable practices is actually good. But instead they tell you things that are totally out of context. There is nothing you can buy from side opposition. Now, this main area of contention on feasibility, which note how opposition only push a negative case on us and do not prove anything positive on their side. They tell you that they question the feasibility of this process and tell you that it's impossible that we achieve such things. Now, we tell you that to develop tourism industries, it already costs millions and millions. The only thing we are doing is redirecting it to more sustainable practices. And even if you tell us it is more expensive, which we have considered from the first speaker, we tell you that it's a long-term investment, because when things are able to sustain in the longer term, there are more tourists coming, the economic betterment is better in the long term. Because we tell you, if opposition does nothing about it, it is incredibly unpleasant for tourists when they want to go to your tourist hotspot. This is the problem we are trying to solve. Now, second, this entire idea of how the UAE is trying to cover up other parts of the city just for Dubai to look extremely good. Now, the idea of realism of tourism in this debate. Yes, we are trying to have a good image, honestly I'm telling you. However, in the process, we actually better the condition on the ground, because you know how we achieve two things here. Number one, on how the society and the international community is likely to accept us more because of our sustainable practices, because you need to know that the world is moving towards sustainable practices. And number two, we actually solve the problem on the ground because we are redirecting funds towards sustainable practices, towards things like waste management on the ground, which opposition do not solve. We achieve a twofold benefit here. Now, next, if we go step by step, it's for a better nation as a whole. We tackle every single industry. But you need to realize, right, this debate focuses on the tourism industry. At worst, right, our side at least tackles the tourism industry, and they tackles nothing on their side. Because now, moving on to the most crucial part of this debate, realize their fantasy idea of total solvency nationwide. They tell you that they can solve the problem nationwide. I completely do not buy this idea, because it is extremely ironic how opposition call us out for the lack of funding to actually fund these tourism industries, but then they want to fund the entire nation and want to better the entire nation. They come up and tell us, oh, we'll redirect funds and solve the nation. I ask the opposition, where does the funds exactly come from? If you tell us we have no funds for the tourism industry, how are we supposed to have funds for the entire nation? Let's say, right, I flip the argument on you. You have no money. Even if we take you at your best, 10 million to sustain the tourism industry is way more likely for us to obtain compared to 1 billion to solve the entire nation. You do not solve the problem at any level and have nothing for your case to stand on. Thus, we take this debate so convincingly, so proud to propose.
4 minutes and 4 seconds.